Bonjour tout le monde. We are ending this week-long trip to Europe in Warsaw. We have been extremely busy over the past number of days. I met with the leaders of the UK, the Netherlands, the Baltic states, Spain, Germany, Poland, the Secretary General of the NATO alliance, as well as Vice President Kamala Harris of the United States. On a été accompagnés par les ministres Freeland, Sajjan, Anand et Joly, qui ont participé dans les réunions et travaillé de façon indépendante. Ça a été un moment important pour le monde de se rassembler dans sa condamnation et son opposition à l'invasion illégale de la Russie de l'Ukraine, mais aussi d'être là pour appuyer l'Ukraine. Our condemnation and pushback against the illegal Russian invasion of Ukraine, and indeed our support for Ukrainians, has led to a level of unity and alignment amongst leaders of democracies around the world, particularly here in Europe and across the Atlantic, that is making a real difference. On Monday, we focused on sanctions. We announced further sanctions for 10 Russian oligarchs. Today I can announce 5 further individuals to be sanctioned, including Roman Abramovich. These individuals will be prevented from dealings in Canada and their assets will be frozen. On top of that, we will be placing restrictions on 32 military entities in Russia that will be prevented from receiving any form of Canadian equipment or supplies. Ça fait partie de notre travail continu d'augmenter les restrictions et les pénalités sur la Russie. Aujourd'hui, on annonce 5 individus additionnels, incluant Roman Abramovich, qui vont être sanctionnés par le Canada, en plus d'ajouter des restrictions sur 32 entités militaires russes qui ne vont pas pouvoir avoir de rapport avec le Canada. We also talked about the importance on Monday of bringing together not just European allies and Western allies, but reaching out to the 141 countries around the world who stood at the United Nations to condemn Russia's actions and stand in favor of the rule of law, the UN Charter, and the values that underpin the peace and stability that we've seen in the world over the past decades. On Tuesday, I visited NATO, the NATO operations in Latvia, where Canada has been leading over a number of years the Enhanced Battle Group. We committed to further multi-year extensions of Operation Reassurance, which is Canada's presence in Latvia and Central and Eastern Europe, increasing significantly the resources and supplies we're dedicating to Europe's Eastern Front. C'est important de souligner le travail extraordinaire que nos militaires font depuis plusieurs années en Lettonie et le rôle important que le Canada a au sein de l'OTAN pour démontrer notre unité et notre résilience et fermeté face à l'agression continue de la Russie. Wednesday, I spent a number of hours with Chancellor Scholz of Germany. He's the new Chancellor of Europe's largest economy, someone I've personally known for a number of years, but it was extremely important to deepen that friendship and the working together on things like strengthening democracy, on pushing back against misinformation and disinformation, obviously in Russia, but also in our own democracies. There is a lot of work we need to continue to do together, and that was something that we spent a lot of time discussing and talking about how we strengthen our economic ties as well. And on Thursday, I came to Warsaw. Ici, on a vu et on voit directement l'impact de cette guerre qui se passe à quelques heures de route d'où on est aujourd'hui, des gens qui fuient avec, laissant derrière eux toutes leurs possessions, qui sont inquiets, oui, pour eux, mais surtout pour ceux qui restent derrière en Ukraine. The women and children that I met yesterday evening talked about their concerns and the uncertainty facing them right now, but they were focused most on the horrors and the fear that they hold for their loved ones, for their boys back in Ukraine, as they talked about it, who are standing every day against Russian atrocities, Russian attacks, an illegal violation of Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity, against which the world must continue to stand. This week has been about deepening the cooperation across the Atlantic, cooperation on economic measures, cooperation on military support, cooperation on welcoming in refugees as Poland and countries of Eastern Europe are doing, but certainly as Canada will also continue to do, as we always have in difficult situations. Ça a été un voyage important, une opportunité pour les Canadiens de démontrer leur solidarité avec les démocraties du monde, avec l'Europe et surtout avec le peuple ukrainien. Merci.
Thank you, Prime Minister. We'll now go to 20 minutes of questions, starting with Mike Blanchfield from CP.
Mike first. Mike. Good morning, Prime Minister. Mike Blanchfield, Canadian Press. Following on your trip here, Poland, what you've seen, meeting the refugees, hearing from President Duda, just knowing the sheer numbers, can you possibly rule out a Canadian airlift anytime in the near future to bring those refugees that do want some relief and want to have some time in Canada?
No, I'm not ruling that out at all. We are looking at all options. We know how important it is to be there to support people fleeing. The connection between Ukraine and Canada is deep, goes back decades, over a century. Canadians want to be there for Ukrainians, and we will be there for them. We've accelerated the immigration and refugee processes. We've made sure that there are extra resources available, but we will also look at doing more. I think that's what Canadians expect.
When?
We will continue to talk about that as we move forward.
Tondo. Next question.
Tondo. Good morning, Tonda McCharles with the Toronto Star. So you came here for face-to-face meetings with leaders across Europe, and I'm curious that given the threat, the nuclear threat we see today in Ukraine with Russia's actions, what have you and the other leaders concluded about Vladimir Putin? Have you concluded he's irrational or just ruthless?
We've concluded, as we continue to do, that we need to be absolutely firm and coordinated in our response. We need to make sure that regardless of Putin's state of mind or motivations, that we demonstrate that the democracies of Europe and North America, and indeed countries around the world, will not accept this violation of fundamental principles of international law, of countries' sovereignty, the invasion, the atrocities being committed by Vladimir Putin in Ukraine cannot stand, and we will continue to push back hard and stay united and demonstrate that Putin cannot win this war. He will lose because Ukrainians are going to stand strong as long as it takes, at horrific cost to themselves and their country, and the world will continue to stand with them and against this Russian invasion.
Prochaine question.
Guillaume Saint-Pierre, Journal de Montréal. Bonjour, M. Trudeau. Je voulais savoir, question un peu simple, qu'est-ce que vous avez appris de neuf, de nouveau que vous ne saviez pas déjà sur ce conflit, sur le Canada, sur le rôle que le Canada peut y jouer? Qu'est-ce que vous avez appris durant cette semaine? Quelque chose de neuf?
Tout d'abord, On sait depuis le début à quel point c'est important d'être là pour les Ukrainiens. J'ai entendu directement de Canadiens d'origine ukrainienne à quel point c'est important. Mais hier soir, à un niveau personnel, j'ai pu m'asseoir avec des familles qui avaient tout laissé derrière eux pour venir ici en Pologne, qui absolument veulent retourner en Ukraine le plus rapidement possible, mais savent qu'ils ne peuvent pas pour l'instant, qui sont anéantis par ce qui se passe chez eux, qui sont encore dans une position de ne pas comprendre, de ne pas accepter cette nouvelle réalité, sont sous le choc pour plusieurs, particulièrement les enfants. Et pour moi, d'avoir pu m'asseoir avec eux, de voir directement, pas juste par les médias et par les médias sociaux, toutes ces images, mais de rencontrer des gens qui sont en train de souffrir, qui ont tellement peur pour leurs êtres chers, pour moi, ça a amené ce que j'avais déjà comme fermeté, comme conviction qu'on faisait la bonne chose. Ça a renforcé ma détermination de continuer à faire tout ce qu'on peut pour les aider et pour défendre la démocratie.
Next question.
Morning, Prime Minister. There are increasing signs that Russia is laying the groundwork for the use of chemical weapons in Ukraine. The world stood back while chemical weapons were used in Syria. Are you prepared to see the same thing happen in Ukraine?
From the moment Russia violated international law by invading Ukraine, they crossed a red line. And the response of the world, the response of NATO, the response of Western allies was immediate and unequivocal, putting crushing, punitive sanctions on Vladimir Putin and those who enable him, creating devastation for the Russian economy. But what we have said is, on top of that, we will continue to deliver military support and do what is necessary to meet this challenge. As Russia commits further and further atrocities, we will continue to look at ways to do more, to stand stronger, and to prevent this illegal and unjust war from continuing or further escalating.
Next question.
Prime Minister, good morning. Travis Stanner, CBC News. Can you talk a little bit about how you are working with other countries that still have a channel to Vladimir Putin, like Israel and also France? And also, in your conversations with Boris Johnson and also Kamala Harris, did you discuss the Budapest Memorandum?
First of all, we are all united as allies in focusing on the need to continue to try and solve this diplomatically. Even as bombs are falling on hospitals and schools, we know that the solution needs to be a political, diplomatic one ultimately, as we make Putin and his enablers pay, as we stand strongly with Ukraine now and into the future. So yes, the channels of communications. I've had a number of conversations with Prime Minister Bennett of Israel, who is directly engaged. Last week I spoke with President Erdogan just before his conversations with Vladimir Putin. We spoke at length, the Chancellor of Germany and I, about his interactions with Putin. We will continue to work together to coordinate the clear messages to Putin that he is unable to win this war in the long run. That yes, he is committing terrible violence daily on the Ukrainian people, but that is not a path to victory. That is a path to destruction of Russia economically and pain for the Russian people because of the coordinated defense of Canadians, defense of Ukrainians that Canadians and others are engaged in right now.
Prochaine question.
Oui, bonjour M. Trudeau, Laurence Martin de Radio-Canada. C'est toujours pas clair pour moi. Est-ce que vous pensez que c'est une bonne... est-ce que vous pensez que c'est une bonne... Just one second, guys. Est-ce que vous pensez que c'est une bonne idée que le Canada fournisse du pétrole et du gaz à l'Europe pour l'aider à réduire sa dépendance face aux hydrocarbures de la Russie? Je ne parle pas des renouvelables, je ne parle pas d'hydrogène, je parle du pétrole et du gaz.
On a maintenant une situation où l'Europe veut réduire sa dépendance sur le pétrole et le gaz russe. Ils ont besoin de sources alternatives de pétrole et de gaz. Le Canada n'a pas actuellement l'infrastructure nécessaire pour pouvoir envoyer des ressources adéquates à l'Europe pour remplacer ce qu'il prenait jusqu'à maintenant de la Russie. On va évidemment parler avec nos amis européens sur si le Canada peut faire des choses dans les années à venir, mais c'est des conversations qu'on va entamer dans les semaines et les mois à venir parce qu'on ne peut pas faire partie de la solution immédiate.
Mais est-ce que vous pensez qu'on doit développer ces infrastructures? Oui.
C'est les conversations que nous allons avoir parce que la priorité, évidemment, c'est pas seulement de se départir du pétrole et du gaz russe, c'est de finir avec notre dépendance sur le pétrole et le gaz tout court. Mais ça, on sait que ça va prendre des années, ça va prendre une transition. On va travailler avec nos alliés dans la lutte contre les changements climatiques, comme l'Europe, pour s'assurer qu'en tant que monde, on puisse faire ça de la bonne façon. Le Canada est là pour lutter contre les changements climatiques et créer un avenir prospère pour tous.
Next question.
Hi, Brian Platt with Bloomberg News. Could I just get you to repeat that last bit on oil and gas in English? And also, why did it take this long to target Abramovich? And what do you assess the impact will be on Yevra Steel or any other economic impact in Canada?
Tout d'abord, le Canada... Oh, sorry. First of all, Canada does not actually have the oil and gas infrastructures necessary to replace the significant share of European energy that is received from Russia. We will, of course, engage in conversations with our European partners on how to make sure we are getting them off of Russian oil and gas, but also ultimately getting off a dependence on oil and gas entirely. Canada can perhaps play a role in facilitating that transition off of oil and gas, and in the more immediate off of Russian oil and gas. But those are significant conversations that we are starting to have with our partners about how to get to hydrogen, how to move forward on renewables, how to supplant in a shorter term their reliance on Russia. Canada has an extraordinary number of hardworking people in our energy industry who are both looking at conventional but also renewables for the future, and I know we can be part of the long-term solution as we move forward. In regards to the 5 further sanctions we're announcing today, including Roman Abramovich, this is part of us moving together with allies around the world on demonstrating clear and deep consequences for Putin and those who have enabled his regime. Every day, as we say, we look to doing more and bringing more solutions forward to push back against Russia, and that's exactly what we're doing today.
Bonjour, Raymond Filion de TVA. Monsieur Trudeau, vous avez dit que ça prend une solution diplomatique. Traditionnellement, le Canada a souvent, dans le passé, joué des rôles d'intermédiaire, des rôles très actifs. Est-ce que vous avez personnellement tenté de parler directement à M. Poutine et sentez-vous que ce serait utile pour vous de le faire?
Au cours des années, j'ai eu plusieurs échanges avec Vladimir Poutine dans différents sommets et j'ai toujours été très clair à quel point le Canada se range avec l'Ukraine et ami avec l'Ukraine et qu'on condamne l'agression depuis longtemps de la Russie envers l'Ukraine. Plus récemment, nos diplomates, notre ministre d'Affaires étrangères a été très, très clair sur notre position. Les Russes savent très bien c'est quoi la position du Canada. Mais nous travaillons avec nos partenaires, avec nos alliés qui ont des canaux directs avec Vladimir Poutine pour renforcer l'unité, la solidarité et la détermination des pays alliés d'assurer des conséquences sévères pour Poutine et pour l'économie russe et notre appui indéfectible à l'Ukraine.
Next question.
Abigail Beeman, Global News. Could I ask you to speak to the Putin question in English? But my question is, I'm interested in hearing more on what you feel that you've achieved on this trip outside of showing unity with allies and like-mindedness on these issues.
English. Putin in English. Excuse me. I have had a number of interactions with Vladimir Putin directly at various summits over the past 7 years. And every single time I have made clear the fact that Canada stands with Ukraine and against the Russian invasions of Ukraine that started back in the Donbass and Crimea a number of years ago. Our diplomatic corps, including our Minister of Foreign Affairs, has continually, including in the past weeks and months, made clear Canada's position in support of Ukraine and against any Russian aggression, and we will continue to do that. But we also work directly with allies who have engaged with Putin, whether it's Prime Minister Bennett of Israel, who I've had a number of conversations with, President Erdogan of Turkey, or Chancellor Scholz, who I discussed at length on his approach and conversations with Putin. We need to continue to remain firm and united in demonstrating our resolve and our deep conviction that Vladimir Putin has made a terrible mistake and will end up losing. Despite how many bombs he can drop on hospitals, or perhaps even because of it, there is no win in this for him, however long it takes. On this trip, yes, it's been about solidarity and alignment amongst leaders across Europe and indeed around the world. But more than that, it's about concrete supports, whether it's strengthening and renewing our commitment to NATO through the Operation Reassurance, as we announced on Tuesday, whether it's bringing forward more concrete sanctions aligned with our allies, whether it's stepping up here in Poland on humanitarian support, support for refugees, whether it's bringing home the reality of what Europe is facing to Canadians through support and excellent reporting by Canadian media. This trip has continued to deepen Canada's conviction and commitment to standing up for democracy and the values that underpin everything that we believe in.
Next question.
Good morning, Prime Minister. Marika Walsh with the Globe and Mail. On Mr. Abramovich, can you please clarify what this means for his subsidiary company's operations in Canada? We know that they're a huge contributor to pipeline manufacturing. So what happens? Are all those operations now seized completely? And what about the 2,200 people that are employed by them?
First of all, the sanctions on Russian officials and oligarchs like Abramovich are directed at them so that they cannot profit or benefit from economic activities in Canada or the hard work of Canadians working in companies that they have investments in. I believe Abramovich owns shares that are worth a little less than 30% of Evraz. We are obviously going to watch carefully, but we are confident that this will not impact the hardworking Canadians who are doing good work in companies across the country, including that one.
So those operations continue?
Yes.
En français.
Nos sanctions sont ciblées sur des individus qui sont en train de contribuer et aider Vladimir Poutine dans son invasion illégale et atroce de l'Ukraine. Les travailleurs au Canada, y compris pour Ivraz, où Abramovich détient un peu moins que 30% de la valeur de la compagnie, ne seront pas affectés par ces sanctions. On est là pour appuyer les Canadiens dans ces moments difficiles, mais on est là aussi pour punir ceux qui aident et appuient Poutine dans cette guerre illégale.
Last question.
Good morning, Prime Minister. Joyce Napier, CTV. I want to go back to what Tonda was talking about, the rational or irrational actor. This is a man who wants to, quote, denazify Ukraine and go after drug addicts. Yesterday, his foreign affairs minister said, no, this is not an invasion. So in your conversations with other leaders, have you brought up the possibility that you may be dealing with somebody who is not rational?
One of the things that we have seen throughout this is a very deliberate and expansive use of misinformation and disinformation aimed at, obviously, the Russian people to justify the deaths of thousands of Russian soldiers invading a neighboring country, but also to try and justify this illegal war to the rest of the world. And we have seen many ridiculous, preposterous justifications that are obviously false and irrational. However, the state of mind of Putin, I don't think can be concluded from based on the misinformation, disinformation, and propaganda that is out there. In the conversations I've had with leaders who have had direct engagement with Vladimir Putin, the issue of what he wants, what the end game is, how to get through this was the central topic of conversation, how to make him understand that there is no win in this for him, that what he is doing is not going to lead to benefits for him or for the Russian people. On the contrary, it has set back Russia's path forward, the path forward for Russians significantly, this terrible mistake he's made. And we are much more focused on how to make sure that there is an end to this rapidly than wondering what, what his deeper motivations or justifications might be.
But the sanctions have hurt the Russian people more than they have deterred Putin. So is there a point when strategy changes?
We are 2 weeks into this illegal war that Vladimir Putin has launched, and we have seen the collapse of the Russian economy, the collapse of the ruble, the shutdown continually of the Russian stock exchange. We've seen serious impacts, yes, on the Russian people, but we've also seen serious impacts on those who have enabled and encouraged Vladimir Putin over the past number of years. And that's why our continued pressure on oligarchs, our continued determination, not just to stand together as allied nations and friends of Ukraine, but our determination to hold in our defense of democracy for as long as it takes with these sanctions, with these penalties for Russia, because this isn't just about Ukraine, although of course it is about Ukraine. It's also about demonstrating that you cannot violate fundamental principles of the international order, like territorial integrity or sovereignty of a neighboring country, and expect to get away with it. This is a moment for all of us to stand up for our values and what we believe in. That is exactly what we are doing.
Thank you very much. This is what ends today's press conference.
Merci beaucoup tout le monde.